Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to the witnesses. Thank you all for being here. I, like so many of us, are very concerned about this deal, not supportive of it whatsoever. And the more I read of the deal, the less I like it, and that doesn't include the parts that I do not know about, the IAEA side agreements. And Ambassador, you've said a couple of conflicting things this morning from my perspective. Sitting here, I can see your notebooks. I can't read what's in it. In the final deal from the IAEA, have you seen it and read it?
Let me be very clear. I have seen the documents that the IAEA and Iran discussed to create the final arrangements for the modalities that underpin the roadmap document being a public document that Congress has a copy of. I was not allowed to keep any of the documents about the arrangements on the modalities that underpin the public roadmap that you have a copy of. However, I told the IAEA that given our Constitution, that if Congress asked me to brief on the details that I understood, I would do so in a classified session, and I will do so this afternoon in the all-Senate classified session. I will give you all of the details of which I am aware.
Have you read the final agreement?
It's not an agreement. It is a set of arrangements that are made.
Have you read it?
I have.
Okay. Question for you, Secretary. You stated earlier that the regime, Iranian regime, continues to fund terrorism and bad behavior. And at the same time, we're concerned that, as at least those of us have commented on the fact that we're concerned that the more money the Iranian regime has, the more they will fund terrorist activity. In spite of the fact that they have a crumbling economy, they have infrastructure needs, they have needs to repair their ability to sell more oil, yet in spite of all of that, they're still funding terrorism. And so it seems like to me that you would agree with National Security Advisor Susan Rice when she said that we should expect that some portion of the money from the sanctions relief will go to the Iranian military and could potentially be used, as you said, will be used, to fund more bad behavior and terrorist behavior in the region in spite of the state of their economy.
Thank you, Senator. I do agree with the premises of your question. I agree with the statement that you quote from former National Security Advisor Rice. We've seen Iran fund terrorism before the sanctions, through the period, the toughest period of the sanctions. We saw them fund these groups during the Iran-Iraq war when their economy was a shambles. Yes. And I expect we'll continue to see that. The question is, what do we do about it? And it's my office's responsibility, along with our colleagues in the interagency and the intelligence community, to ramp up our efforts to be able to go after those funding streams. So the alternative, though, that I think is put out there doesn't make sense to me strategically, which is that we don't enter into a nuclear agreement, we don't give them back their money. In other words, we don't do this exchange of securing a nuclear commitment in exchange for sanctions relief, and then what? So we'll continue to combat Iran's support for terrorism as we've been doing, but we will have the prospect of Iran 2 to 3 months away from breakout. To me, when you're talking about a state sponsor of terrorism, that is a terrifying prospect. And so we've decided we need to address the nuclear threat and then turn to the terrorism. And I think that's the strategic way to do this.
So strategically speaking, according to the agreement, 5 years from the start of the agreement, they'll have more access to weapons. 8 years, they'll have access to ballistic missiles, and they'll be able to move forward in advanced research on nuclear technology. And then we know for certain at the end of the 10th year, we're looking at a breakout phase. So the reality of the agreement, is that we will, with certainty, be able to mark on a calendar when the Iranians will have an opportunity for a nuclear weapon.
No, as Ambassador Sherman has said repeatedly, at no point, at no future date, not 25 years, not 50 years, does Iran have the ability to pursue a nuclear weapon. In fact, the agreement locks in the contrary. The agreement has varying durations with respect to Iran's enrichment limits, and those are strictest in the first 10 and 15 years and then are reduced. But at no point does Iran have the right to pursue or obtain a nuclear weapon.
But we'll just have to respectfully disagree. Let me ask one final question, because my time is up as well. I think it's in paragraph 25 of the agreement. It seems to suggest that there will be an effort made to preempt state laws and states who have otherwise passed laws that prohibit companies from investing in Iran. How is this not a violation of states' rights, and how do you read paragraph 25 of the agreement?
Thank you, Senator. There's nothing to my knowledge about preemption in the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. All that the JCPOA says is that we will make sure that state authorities who have enacted legislation, divestment legislation, with respect to Iran are informed of the developments, which I think are pretty key to be aware of when it comes to the Iran nuclear deal, and that will encourage them to take those into account as they consider their divestment laws.
And how will you encourage them?
Simply by setting forth what this deal is, what it is not. In some cases, those divestment laws were predicated on the nuclear case, and I think for any state authority who's looking at divestment laws based on Iran's nuclear program, you would have to take into account the developments, the historic developments that we're talking about today.
Thank you.